Over 500 miners remain underground at the Modder East gold mine. That's in Springs. We're told they're staging a sit-in, demanding union representation. The National Union of Mineworkers is calling on police to intervene and arrest those who've been involved. Let's unpack the story while also taking stock of the many other issues that exist within mining in South Africa. Bringing Chief Economist at the South African Minerals Council, that's Henk Langenhoven, who joins us via our video link this morning. Henk, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much indeed for making time. You know, depending who you ask, the reasons why some of those mine workers are still underground changes. But I suppose among the issues that come up is whether or not it's safe to do so for so many hours. What have you been told around what's happening there?
Yeah, look, the situation changes all the time, and I'm not that close to the security people that are working at the Minerals Council, but it is dangerous to stay too long underground, and we need to resolve that problem as soon as possible.
Yeah, are these kind of issues commonplace in, mining companies in the country? Concerns around union representation. I mean, look, we know that the stakes can be quite high depending on which union is in charge at any stage, and that's for all kinds of labor issues. But as far as you're concerned, is this a microcosm of a greater macro issue in the country?
The contestation of the different labor unions in the mining sector is quite tough and strong. And this sort of action, I would imagine, would be one of the more extreme ways of trying to force the situation in either way. So there are, and I'm quoting someone from Sibanye that said some of these things are sometimes commonplace, but I want to make it more generic and say stoppages are commonplace, because of all sorts of issues, pressures from within the labor force, concerns about bribery that takes place to get illegal miners down operating shafts, the pressures from local communities, the pressures from business groups that are vying for either contracts or employment. So it is a very concerning, broader issue that creates a lot of uncertainty and a lot of, how shall I call it, disruptions of the mining processes. Mining needs to be a very smooth process from where you go down into the shaft, you blast, you bring it up, you get the ore to the smelters, etc. And if that is disrupted at any point, either underground or roads being blocked or any one of those causes is on the one hand a source for uncertainty, but a great problem in terms of disrupting output and eventually getting your product to market.
Absolutely. It's also the bedrock, mining that is, of our economy, excuse the pun. In many instances when we see these kind of stoppages, they're usually directed at the employer, and I think it's safe to say in this case that's not what's happening. And the question that arises is, what role then can the employer, if any, play in order to make sure at the very least that operations continue?
Well, to follow the law in the one hand of the right to organize, and then probably to a lesser or larger degree apply the laws of safety for its own people. Remember, we are under very strict rules and regulations around safety underground, and then simple unrest that needs to be controlled. It's been a concerning situation that many of the valid stoppages or strikes, let me call it that way, for wage negotiations, for example, often deteriorates into violence, and that is unacceptable from any side. So we are really asking for stability for the survival of the operations, and therefore for the livelihood of the employees working there.
Yeah. You know, you speak about stability, and another issue you've mentioned is concerns raised around illegal miners infiltrating through the system. I mean, we had been told there's intervention from a governmental level, intelligence-driven kind of intervention to try find where, in fact, the leak is happening, for lack of a better term. How pleased are you about the progress that's being made insofar as that is concerned, and whether or not that kind of problem complicates what's taking place even at this mine?
The process has been in the making and has taken quite a leap forward with the CEO of Sibanye being part of that. The big issue was coordination amongst the different security forces and the joint operations nationally and provincially, and then in an area. There was a case in the Northern Cape, for example, where local communities and unemployed people and business forums joined together and were threatening to disrupt the whole province. And simply because of very, very well coordinated efforts by mine security, police, reaction forces, that was halted. And that's really what is needed. The capacity is there. It's a case of actually applying it in a concentrated way to counter these occurrences.
Yeah. You know, and depending again who you ask, illegal mining is defined differently. In fact, you know, some people think illegal mining and artisanal mining can be used interchangeably, and at least from my knowledge, that's not necessarily the case. To what extent is our inability to define what this is in government policy preventing our ability to respond to it adequately?
You must actually stand quite far back and think about why this is happening, and it's really the core source of and reason for this is really poverty and unemployment, and to a large degree the failure of local authorities to provide the most basic of services. And remember, mining has moved from the old days, where it was basically concentrated in Gauteng, has moved out into the province's deep rural areas where most of the local authorities are not functioning. And people just need a livelihood. If someone offers you 10 rand for a bucket of ore to crush and you have nothing, that's very understandable that it's a means of survival. But it has all sorts of ramifications, apart from the criminality. On these sites, I want to use the analogy of cancer. It actually influences the whole fiber of the area in which this happens. Prostitution, illegal liquor trade, most horrific labor conditions, etc. And I mean, that is very important, that we as a mining sector are actually very serious about. But the other issue which is often overlooked is the sanctity of property. If a mining company are not certain that it has access and safe access to its operations, that's actually the fundamental thing that starts to crumble. And an invasion of lands are really causing that, which is one of the fundamentals of the economic system. And then health and safety in the sense of someone getting hurt or die, as we hear often of people dying on the ground for reasons like staying there too long or accidents or so on. Right. That's a very important issue for the mining sector. So it's a difficult thing to I don't want to say control, but to manage in South Africa, and the angles are a plethora of it. So sure. We're struggling with it, the government is struggling with it.
Henk, Langenhoven, thanks very much indeed for your time. Really do appreciate it. Certainly a multifaceted issue, and hopefully we're able to give it the due kind of attention it needs, given its complexity. Henk is the Chief Economist at the South African Minerals Council. Once again, thanks very much indeed.